Okay, we are live.
Great. It looks like we're waiting on 2 more committee members. Hey, Lisa. I'll give it another minute. Remind me, how many members makes a quorum?
4.
4. Okay. And we've got 5, so I will kick off our meeting in a minute. Just wait to see if someone else hops on in just a minute. Well, all right, I'm going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the May 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Art and Public Places Committee. First off, a little bit of housekeeping reminder to be good Zoom mate members, and we'll keep courtesy while other people are speaking. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E and recommendation of the Health Officer of Sonoma County, Art and Public Places Committee members will be participating in this meeting via Zoom webinar. Members of the public can participate in the meeting via Zoom. At this time, recording secretary, will you let our wonderful watchers let them know how to participate in this afternoon's meeting?
Absolutely. Members of the public may participate via Zoom by selecting the raised hand button. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. You will do this at any item that you would like to make a comment on. A counter timer will appear for your convenience. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And that takes care of our call to order. At this point, recording secretary, will you please take a roll call of committee members?
Absolutely. Chair Kiefer.
Present.
Vice Chair Jones-Carter.
Here.
Member Baumgartner.
Here.
Member Adrian.
Here.
Member Fuentes.
Here.
Member Nathanson.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all members, with the exception of member Sayers, are present.
Moving on to item 3, public comments. This is the time when any person may address matters not listed on this agenda, but are within the subject matter of this jurisdiction. The public may comment on agenda items when the item is called. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Recording secretary, do we have any public comments at this time?
We do not, nor do we have any voicemails or emails for this meeting.
Okay. Next, moving on to item 4, we've got approval of 2 meeting minutes. First off, we have the meeting minutes for the January 10th, 2022 meeting.
Chair Kiefer, I just wanted to interject. Unfortunately, we don't have enough members that were present at the meeting right now to vote on the January meeting, but we can go to the next set of meeting minutes.
Can I ask a question clarifying that? Eileen, the only member not present is Bob, and he wasn't at that meeting either. So I think we have everyone that's needed today.
Oh, because it's I apologize.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tara.
Okay.
totally saving the day.
I do have a question. Do they need to vote on them separately, or can be because of the different people who were at that meeting?
They will need to vote on them separately.
Okay.
Okay, first up, we have the January 10th, 2022 meeting minutes. They were attached in our agenda packets, and I hope everyone has had the opportunity to review our meeting minutes. Can I get a motion for the January 10th, 2022 meeting minutes?
Make a motion that we accept them and approve the minutes as written for the January meeting.
Thanks, Anne. And Melanie seconds. Great. All right, at this time, recording secretary, can we take a roll vote?
Certainly. Chair Kiefer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jones-Carter,
Aye.
Member Baumgartner,
Aye.
Member Asdarian,
Aye.
Member Puentes,
I will abstain since I was not at the meeting.
gotcha, and Member Nathanson.
I will also abstain because I was not present at that meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The motion passes with 4 ayes.
Great, thank you. Next, we have April 4th, 2022 meeting minutes. I believe everyone was in attendance for that meeting. I am looking for a motion.
I'd like to motion to approve the April 2022 minutes as submitted.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Great. I would also like to take a roll call vote for this item.
Wonderful. Chair Kiefer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jones-Carter,
Aye.
Member Baumgartner,
Aye.
Member Asdarian,
Aye.
Member Puentes,
Aye.
Member Nathanson.
Aye.
Thank you. The vote passes with, I apologize, with unanimous ayes, and noting the absence of Member Sayers.
Sorry to interrupt. I believe Nathan was not present at that meeting and so should abstain. So could we change that for the record?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll abstain. Thanks, Tara.
No worries.
Perfect.
Great. The record now notes that the meeting minutes for the April 4th, 2022 meeting have been accepted by the committee. Moving forward on to item 5, scheduled items. Kicking off, we have 5.1, a progress report on strategic plan implementation and annual work plan discussion. Staff will share a progress report on strategic plan implementation and open the first in a series of discussions about the annual work plan process. This afternoon, Tara will lead us through a presentation and then conduct or facilitate a conversation with our team, hopefully kicking off a series of discussions that will lead to how our annual work plan shall be facilitated and moving forward. Thank you, Tara. I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Kristen. Eileen, would you please put up the presentation for this item? Thank you. So today, as Kristen said, I'll be presenting a progress report on our strategic plan implementation so far to date and talk about a new process for an annual work plan and open up hopefully a series of conversations that the committee can have as we try to tackle a different process for establishing an annual work plan each year. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Eileen, are you there? Next slide, please. Okay.
I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
Member Sayers called and I was trying to
gotcha.
help him get in.
Okay.
Apologies.
No
Next
worries.
screen.
Okay, thank you so much. So to start off, I wanted to talk a little bit about where we are at with implementing our strategic plan and how that kind of plays into this conversation about our annual planning process. So I've put in here essentially what our strategic plan, the implementation of the first full year of our strategic plan as it was presented to the committee as part of our annual plan for last year. And then I've added a column for the steps taken to date on the items, as well as what we've spent to date on the items. And so this is really a kind of a snapshot in time as of the end of April, showing what progress we're making on the strategic plan. I think that it's humbling to realize how much we have going on with the whole program and other duties related to the public art program and others, and how we've been slowly chipping away at what the first year of the strategic plan called for, but there's lots still to be done. And so I think that it is more realistic to look at prioritizing some of the items called for in the 2022-23 fiscal year, and really being more realistic about how we're implementing that and the resources we can put towards them in terms of staffing. So just to briefly talk about some of these items in particular, I think that the formation of the Art and Public Places Committee task forces kind of addresses a preliminary way to address some of the items under community engagement and input, as well as in some of the programming and partnerships. So those are noted there. We've also taken steps to start the process of building an advisory board. We have taken steps to hire new consultants to assist us with some of the work as is called for under outsourcing work, new contractors. So some of the funds are being spent through contracts. Some of the funds are being spent directly. But you can see that there's still more to be undertaken. One of the things we are just now starting on is talking about the process for undertaking the public art audit. And then the two projects that are being kind of formulated right now, well, actually one is fully underway, which is our collaboration with Creative Sonoma on the Art Surround project. Those funds haven't been spent yet, but they're dedicated to that project. So that's one of the green rows with the $50,000 anticipated cost there. We know that we will be spending that, but those funds haven't been expended yet. So those are some of the items I just wanted to point out. I'm happy to answer any specific questions on this, but I really just wanted to briefly touch on it as an introduction to a broader view of all of our work areas that we're responsible for, and specifically how this plays into figuring out a new process for annual planning. So I'll just move on to the next slide, but happy to also answer questions specifically related to that. So this is a diagram that I hand drew and then edited to try to capture the complexity and the quantity of work that falls under my management, essentially, and what I'm responsible for, along with our contractors, such as Jessica and others that we hire to help us with specific projects. So there's a lot of information here, but I'll hold. It looked like, did someone raise their hand? I'm happy to answer a question. Yeah, go ahead, Melanie.
On the build. So do you want us to ask questions as they come up, or wait till the end, or?
Yeah, if you want to ask questions on that last slide, we can go back and put that up.
Okay, yeah. So under Build Advisory Board, you said this is currently in planning. What's happening with that? I don't know this.
Yeah, we really have just started the conversations of figuring out the best timing to do it and the best kind of membership structure or makeup of that group. But they're just the preliminary conversations among staff at this point. And so there haven't been any invitations sent or any discussions with the committee yet.
Okay. So when you say this is just beginning, it's just the staff at the staff level?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was my question.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. So this diagram is really, like I said, meant to capture the kind of interconnectivity between the different program areas as well. So that's why I felt it was best to demonstrate it visually rather than more verbally. So the purple circles, public art, event permitting, and Out There Santa Rosa are essentially our programs, the three main programs. The areas in blue are the advisory bodies, so Art and Public Places Committee being one of them, that provide input and influence over the areas, different work areas. And then the areas in green, the circles in green, indicate different funding sources for the different programming areas. So, the public art program alone consists of many different components. Our partnerships and collaborations, our gifts, accessions, deaccessions, relocations of items in our collection, as well as the collection maintenance and conservation. Our rotating exhibits program, which consists of the National Arts Program, nonprofit organized exhibits, and guest curator exhibits. Or street performer permits that we issue. Public art and private development, which includes managing in lieu fees from developments that are required to complete the requirement, and art on site projects as well. Cultural events, Live at Juilliard is the main one under that. Implementing our strategic plan, which includes a variety of areas that we've already started to focus on, as well as our public art projects, which include program initiated projects, which can be temporary or permanent, capital improvement project related. So when the city is building a new project, redoing a building, whatever the case may be, there are art funds generated from that, and sometimes are put on site of that project. And then there are community-led projects. And of course, Art and Public Places is the committee itself is kind of its own area within public art. It's an advisory body, but the meetings, the task forces, training, policy and procedure, budget, and outreach kind of are all tasks that fall under that area. Then moving over to some of the other ones, I won't go through all of them, but you can see that the event permitting includes a variety of components, as does Out There Santa Rosa. And then over to the side, there's like these kind of floating things, which are kind of systematic, larger scale things that are kind of always present, but change over time. So making sure that our policies and procedures are what we need to run our programs and making changes as needed. And then there's economic development-led initiatives that sometimes cross over into public art, such as the small business support program we're working on now that includes facade improvement grants. And then there's a lot of dots connected, dotted lines connecting a variety of things. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this, but I really wanted to provide this as a starting point for conversation about how can we do our annual planning process differently than in the past. And given we have a strategic plan that is a new workload in and of itself, plus all of our existing things that are ongoing, are there things that we can prioritize differently? Are there things that Art and Public Places can take a bigger role in owning and implementing? And I think it's really a more holistic approach to look at everything and then decide and have a conversation about what should the public art program be focusing on in any given year, what are ongoing things that should be a priority, and what are things that we can partner to accomplish versus do ourselves to accomplish. So that's really why I wanted to provide this to start that conversation. And just to remind everyone, our normal process has been historically a one meeting where I usually bring a proposed document to you, which is our annual work plan and expenditure plan, and then ask the committee to approve that. Instead of doing that, this process is intended to be a much more collaborative and iterative process where we don't have the right answers right now. I don't have something specific to present to you to approve. It's more about a conversation in figuring out how do we get to that document that the committee can ultimately approve.
And Tara, if I may, in working with you on this, I think the other big thing is historically, the committee has really looked at what's under the purview of the ordinance, not what are the opportunities of the organization, right, of the committee. And the way the Art and Public Places Committee is working now is so much more collaborative that though there are specific things that you need to do that were in historically, I think in your work plans, there is just such a merger of opportunities that relate back that go beyond your traditional scope of work, which is, I think you said that, but I just want to make sure there is a clear line between the have-to-haves in terms of what we rely on the Art and Public Places Committee to do per the ordinance and the things that make it a better program overall with your support and help.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think that moving forward, this map of our work areas is one kind of consideration to have in mind while we're thinking about this process and trying out something a little bit different. But then if we go to the next slide, there's other considerations such as, well, the strategic plan in and of itself. But the next slide talks about the continuing projects. So essentially each year we might start a new annual plan, or we might add things to an annual plan that are new, but we also have ongoing projects that sometimes take 3 or 4 years to complete. And so we have ongoing commitments and dedicated staff and resources to those projects that do continue for more than that 1 year. So tracking that in our process, I think is very important. So for instance, these are the ones that we kind of have ongoing currently that we're continuously and working on ongoing. They will have end dates ultimately, but right now these are all active in some way. The only thing that I would say is consistent in all of this is we will always have ongoing maintenance and conservation of our collection because we have a collection. So that'll probably be the one constant that's a continuing project year over year. The items that kind of are being managed under that will change year to year, but same function essentially. And then each year we also have new opportunities that get presented to us. So for instance, the Highway 101 pedestrian overcrossing is a great opportunity. It's a new opportunity, but funding is needed for that and staffing resources are needed for that. So how do we also take into consideration the new opportunities that we don't want to turn down to have public art be involved with? And the ones that seem to be coming my way currently are all city initiated. So they're all capital projects that either has an art requirement in and of itself, or that they just want to include art in the project, which is great. You know, we've always kind of wanted the public art program to be at kind of on people's radar and be at the level where we were, you know, one of those first phone calls that, you know, hey, we're doing a project, we should talk to you about incorporating art in it. So now those phone calls are coming in. We also have Fire Station 5, which is being rebuilt up in Fountain Grove. That one does have a different funding source, but will require staff resources. So yeah, those are the new opportunities that are on the horizon now, but there will always be some, right? There will always be new things coming in. So how also to account for that? Lisa, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. On the Asawa panels, is our group going to be involved? Because I know the downtown committee was working on that, correct?
The fountain itself is a privately done project that that is being done by a local developer with support privately. But the panels themselves, and I'll provide this update later in the meeting under project updates, is the public art program's responsibility to put the art panels back on the square. And if you recall, we voted on casting them into bronze last summer. And so we're currently working on that.
Okay. And then, how is the downtown committee involved? Because I know they were taking care of something with it before. I mean,
just the fountain itself.
Okay, just the fountain itself. Okay, got it. And then for the Depot Park, I know we did vote on that and we chose an artist. Are we going to, because you did revisit the artist proposal, you have that on there. Are we going to revisit and have we been discussing with the artists, the same artist that was approved before, or will we start this process all over since it's been so long?
No, we have a contract with an artist that if we
Okay.
can continue with would be preferred over
Mhm.
starting the process over. It's more a matter of revisiting the landscape plan that the artist proposed and making sure that the Parks Department has the funding and resources to put towards the actual landscape component. And so those conversations are have been ongoing, but I think we're getting closer to knowing if we have the ability to move forward. They're kind of parallel projects that are that need to both happen at the same time in order for things to be successful with the way that the artist proposed their piece. So yes, I don't have specifics on that, but we have been in conversation with the Railroad Square Association, who is very interested in taking more ownership over improvements to the park, and with the Parks Planning Division to talk about funds for possible landscape changes.
Got it. Thank you, Tara.
I have a question. So the, sorry, the budget that's proposed, or the amounts that are here, does this coincide with our strategic plan for implementation for this next year?
I did not provide any proposed strategic plan budget for next year. What I showed you on that first slide is our current annual plan. That is directly from the strategic plan. Those anticipated numbers are what was approved by the committee back last year.
Okay.
And so this is our current year.
Okay.
Only. I did not include a slide with any information about what our strategic plan implementation would look like for 2022-23. That would be our next fiscal year. I would like to get to that point in a future meeting, but I wanted to start the conversation with a broader view of how we can change the process to get there first.
Because I was thinking just that it seems like the strategic plan should be our guiding light. If, we said we were going to do these things in this year and this year for a specific time frame, that kind of goes hand in hand with the budget planning, and for setting priorities. Like I mentioned earlier our toolkit, and I don't know where it falls in the plan, but it seemed to be, when we were doing this planning process, a hot button that we wanted to, really streamline the process for getting information out to people on how to use our services. And so I was just thinking, we don't want to lose sight of those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think that's helpful to hear, that a priority should be put on our strategic plan implementation, for sure. I think it's also, Eileen, if you could go to the next slide, it's also harder said than done because of all the other commitments we have, right? So, I mean, if you just look in public art, strategic plan is one small spoke off of that wheel, right? So, I mean, prioritizing that, I think that's good direction. That's good feedback. But in what's the trade-off? Can we do everything at the same priority level, or do some things need to be less of a priority? I think is how I would respond, at least initially, to that.
And I think, I don't know, I just think our committee could be more involved in working out some of these details. Like, we could take on the toolkit, and a group of 2 or 3 people could work on some of these projects, so that it doesn't all fall on you. Maybe, I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I mean, that is what what I think is a part of the solution here, or a new way of doing that, is to figure out which areas Art and Public Places committee members can take more ownership over and be active in developing that project. And so if those are items right out of the strategic plan that committee members want to sign up for and have the time to commit to developing, doing research, whatever's required, I think that's a great solution to help spread out the work. So, yeah. Jessica, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to jump in and say that while the strategic plan is, I liked what you said, a guiding light, Melanie, the actual timeline of it is not necessarily something that we need to stick to.
Right. So I think that that's one of the things that is interesting in looking at like how we've gotten where we've gotten so far in this year's implementation of it. It's like, I think when you start looking at what's called for in the next year, it's a lot of things that are continuing, but then doing the toolkits is a new project to undertake. And so how do we keep adding work with no more resources, essentially, and so I think that's exactly the types of solutions we're looking for, Melanie, is to say, yes, we have the ability to use Art and Public Places committee member subcommittees or task forces to really spread the work around. And we can also say, well, okay, forming the advisory council or committee toolkits, doing a new programs so that there's funding available for artists. Does that mean we have to start a new program? Does that mean we have to do a new call for artists, or can we allocate those funds to a need we already know we have, such as like the Highway 101 overcrossing, or, how do we look at it so that we're not just saying, oh, well, the strategic plan called for this. And it's like, yes, it did, but let's be smart about it and say, well, those funds also fit for this project that's we know we already have to take on.
Yeah, and I think to that point, because you say resources, I think I'm hearing you say staff. That's one thing. It expands it if, to Melanie's point, the committee takes on things that they're particularly interested in, because the other resource is money, and the money is much more as leveraged differently when you look holistically at this. I love the idea of committee members saying, okay, I want to take this on, because your questions will probably force us to look completely outside of APPC to see how to make that happen. And that's where the leveraging really happens.
So yeah, those are that's kind of what I think this conversation can do, is to start asking those questions and trying to answer them, knowing that there will be a variety of solutions maybe that we need to try to figure out what's going to work best, and then make improvements as we keep moving along. So that's really what I wanted to start off by talking about today. So I'm happy to hear from anyone else who wants to chime in with ideas or questions, or just, are there areas that you feel Art and Public Places committee members can take over more actively? Are there suggestions for how we prioritize when we get requests to be involved with projects? Those types of things I think would be helpful to hear from you on. Nathan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think maybe in some respects, my experience with OPAF and kind of interfacing with them to bring that fair to Juilliard Park is, it's kind of like that's sort of shaping the way that I'm reading this material. And just being able to write to you to kind of achieve really basic infrastructure goals for that event was very helpful. And I think a lot of the time, those kinds of basic considerations are, the place where things need to start. So making that available on the website feels critical to me.
Mhm.
You know, the fact that there are no bathrooms there, but portalettes are available free through Recology, or the fact that you need to make arrangements for garbage collection if you're going to have an event. All of these kinds of things represent a significant obstacle if they're unfamiliar to an organization that's trying to get something going for the first time. But as I'm looking at this, and you know, I'm not officially involved in that organization, but it seemed like an opportunity to kind of workshop some of the issues that might come up in you know, as more expansive kinds of cultural events start to get into the mix with this committee. And I think it might, well, yeah, I don't know.
I think that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure, you know, I'm sort of working on this. I'm helping them to facilitate this project that sort of checks a lot of these boxes. But when I look at this, I'm not quite sure how to engage with it.
Well, what I hear you saying, Nathan, which I think is helpful, is that there's a lot of information that we can share with the public and with
Mhm.
partners. And if it's more accessible, like on a website that's more functional than what we currently have, that helps get the information out there and gives people the tools they need. So, I mean, it kind of plays into the toolkit idea, which is exactly what we wanted, you know,
Yeah.
one of the goals of that project.
Mhm.
And also in our strategic plan is, I mean, we very clearly recognize that we need a better website. And so while the Out There Santa Rosa site has public art featured on it, it doesn't serve like kind of more of the business or administrative needs
Mhm.
of the public art program for in a website format. So, I mean, that is definitely still on our to-do list to make
Mhm.
sure that what we're presenting there is helpful, guiding information that gives people tools to do what they want to do.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's part of what I hear you saying. Anybody else?
I was just going to say, I think this, I mean, sound like a broken record, but it just reminded me when we were talking about, and I'm not trying to harp on the toolkit thing, but when we were doing the street mural project, I think it was Raises Collective, if I'm saying it correctly. And there were some really great artists there, and they were talking about wanting to do a mural and how does it work, and we told them about art in public places, and they were it was just astounding to me that they didn't know what options were available to them, or how to even start. And I guess I just keep going back to the fact that we have to make it easier. We have to somehow get the information out to people about what is available to them easily, quickly, and so that it's not thought of as some cumbersome process.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I agree with that completely.
I agree with that too. And actually, Tara, I wanted to just say, now that I've been kind of listening to the conversation and pondering this this diagram that you outlined, I mean, it's really helpful to see the relationship of the Public Art Committee to these other areas, but how to represent something this complicated to the public, I think, is a really big challenge. But probably what Art in Public Places does, and actually this is one note I made as people were talking, that we're represented as an advisory body, but I actually think we have some authority, and I'm wondering how our authority over decisions compares to, let's say, the downtown subcommittee, economic development subcommittee, or others, because that can also, I think, be useful information to the public as well as us, because we actually vote on things and our vote counts and actually makes things happen. And so where the power lies, I think power dynamics are really important for people to be aware of and understand. And I think it also helps us understand what responsibility we have. But looking at all of this, I mean, I think it's, even myself, I was thinking, what exactly is our role relative to, let's say, Out There Santa Rosa, which also does public art activities? And so knowing what the relationship is specifically internally is helpful, but just as important, I think, is that the public can actually see it on a website, navigate it, really understand it. To Melanie's point. And one last thing, while I've got the floor, is I think, Kristen, I think it's your background. Is that a mural from the Earth Day project? Whatever that is in your background is awesome. I like that.
That's Bud Snow. That's in Juilliard Park. That was
it's Juilliard Park. Sorry,
I
was trying to place it, but anyway, I love seeing that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, I just want to respond. I see your hand up, Lisa, so just hold on one sec. I just want to respond to the advisory bodies note. I mean, I think you're right. We can distinguish and better articulate Art and Public Places authority over the explicit areas that are stated that you have authority over. I think advisory bodies it's just kind of a blanket term that we use for the bodies that aren't council in the city, like the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board and the other subcommittees. But I think you're right, we can be much clearer about that because the policy, even though the policy itself refers to Art and Public Places as that they're established to advise city council, the city manager, and the arts coordinator, you know what I mean? It's like, it's more about terminology and how we use that phrase within the city structure. But I like that we can better clarify that for the public in particular.
And honestly, generally in the public doesn't need to know the sausage making behind it, like the things that we struggle with and who does what. The idea that I always hear this committee, and I think Vice Chair Jones Carter and I talk about this, is it should look seamless from the public's point of view. So the answer to the public should be yes, and this is how, not yes, this is how because we have this connection to this, or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah. Lisa?
Yes, so I had a couple of questions. One of them actually was for Jessica too, in the Live at Juilliard Park, which I'm really excited that's back. And so when I'm out there and I'm talking to people, I like to tell them more about the arts and what's going on in Santa Rosa. And so I was looking at a few of these items that you have on there, and that one particular, I looked on the Out There website and stuff, and I don't see it on there. It could just be me. And I don't see what bands are going to be playing that day. And so as much as I'd like to get as much of the stuff that we can out there to other people and make it known, so they can reserve these Sundays to have free music at the park, bring your family, bring your dogs, bring whoever, and just have a good time.
Yeah, we're just not quite there yet, but it's all in the works. The bands have all been selected, but we need to make sure all their contracts go through before we advertise which bands are going to be playing on what days.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so it's almost there.
Okay, so I just need to wait for a second and then it'll be okay.
Although we should probably, were the dates available?
It just says there's nothing on the Out There. There is on the Santa Rosa, the city of Santa Rosa, and it's just from I think mid-July through mid-August or third week of August. And I'm assuming it's every Sunday from.
Yeah, I can make that clearer on there.
Yeah. cool. Yeah.
But we will make sure that you all get the announcement and the materials that you can help invite people to come to those for sure.
Okay. And then regarding like the street performers, because you do the street performers permits, are those, do we know, because a lot of street performers are pretty entertaining. Sometimes you just want to sit down, watch or listen. And is it just, we just give a permit and they go out there and there's no, notification to anybody what's going to be out there when, or how does that work?
Yeah,
Just-
the street performer permit is a free permit that anyone can get as long as they have a photo ID and they come into City Hall, or we can do it through email mostly. And they essentially don't have to say where they're going to be. The permit allows them to perform on any city kind of right of way. So parks, sidewalks where they can fit without blocking the sidewalk. They can be in, Depot Park. They can be in Courthouse Square. So it's city property, not like in front of Oliver's or something like that. It doesn't cover private property. And there are certain kind of restrictions and guidelines that they follow in terms of volume and how long they can be in one place and all of that. But that's essentially what they're permitted when they get a permit.
Okay, great. Thank you for that info. And I think that's it for me right now.
Any other thoughts on how we might undertake implementing strategic plan and coming up with an annual work plan? I know it's a dense topic. I'm trying to think of what will be most helpful. So any suggestions on what would be most helpful for me to bring back to the next discussion about this? That's also open for input. I think that it seems like it may be more helpful to have a series of these conversations closer to each other so they're not all a month apart. So I would like to suggest that we have a couple special meetings so that we can really kind of dive into some of this a little bit more. But I would also like to hear what would be most helpful.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No,
No, you
Sorry.
said you were done.
Okay.
So
no, I know I'm not
kidding.
done now. That since Tara did say that though, now I'm just wondering, would it be possible? Because I know, Tara, you know all of the stuff that you put down and you're familiar with it. Give us an idea what would be easiest for you to give out to us as the committee and to take on. So, I mean, I might want to grab something looks interesting to hear me and something I would want to work on. But the thing is I really don't know the complexity of that item. And it could be a lot more than, or it could be a lot less, or it just to give us ideas and which would help you a lot and for us to get some stuff done and actually, be more of a collaborative group here. And help out.
Okay, thanks. So suggestions for areas or tasks that Art in Public Places committee members could take on is
Yes.
what would be helpful to you. Okay,
Absolutely.
Nathan, I saw your hand up next, and then Melanie.
Yeah, I'm finding it very helpful to look at this chart, but I'm also wondering if it might be possible to make some kind of notation around intake sites, right? Like what are the points at which a kind of interface with the process is available publicly? These kind of like starting points. I'm for like out there SR, it would be the website, I guess. But also in terms of permitting and those kinds of things. I don't know. I mean, I could go through and make, put in hyperlinks for myself, but I think it would be helpful to kind of have a sense of where how people are engaging with this structure and with this process. What's the starting point?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay. I think Melanie, you were next, and then
yeah,
Aaron.
for the new opportunities, do we know how much money would be for each one of these things?
So I think the two on that list are really just, I think it's the other way, Eileen, on the presentation. There you go. They're just the Highway 101 pedestrian overcrossing and the Fire Station 5. The Fire Station 5 has funding from the project itself, so they're
Okay.
not asking for funding at this point. The other one, however, though, you heard our conversation with Grant at the last meeting.
Mhm.
I think that they're at a place where, you know, the recommended budget for this project would be at least $200,000 for art, given the size and scope, because that's about 1% of the construction budget.
Mhm.
And so what essentially where we're at with those conversations is whatever art and public places can't fund, we will have to ask for other source, you know, ask another source. And I think that Grant's team is willing to go to council and ask for additional funds, but that's essentially where the process would lead to.
So the 50, so we have, under programming and projects, we have 100,000 there.
That's from
Did I-
this year. So all of the funds for this year are allocated already to
Uh-huh,
projects.
uh-huh.
So we need to look for things that aren't on that spreadsheet. Essentially, we would need to look at what's in our reserves for the Public Art Fund and how much, knowing our other commitments or other things we want to prioritize, what could we spend on that out of the reserves?
Okay. And what's our reserve?
Right now, as of last week when I was doing the calculations, it's a little under $1 million.
Okay. Okay. And do you know what's earmarked already of that million for next year?
Well, if we're implementing our strategic plan and going along the same, you know, using the schedule and the implementation plan as laid out in the plan, the cost for next year are probably around $300,000, $330,000.
Okay.
If we're also going to be doing our same level of continuing projects. So that also adds in our contract staff that we have. It adds in our annual conservation and maintenance. So in that amount that we're also looking at you know, our regular programming that we would do, new projects, new calls for artists, and we put kind of a placeholder of $50,000 in that spot. So theoretically, that line item could go towards the 101 overcrossing,
Right.
but we probably need to beef it up more, right? Like that's not quite enough.
Okay. Okay.
Anne, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. I feel like, you know, just having not been here during normal times, I don't really know how things roll normally when people start talking about usual things that, you know, Juilliard Park, I think I just saw a little bit of that because we moved here the end of that summer before it wasn't happening anymore. I love all this information, but I would love to see it presented in a couple different ways. Like even, I don't even know if I just don't know where to find it. What kind of things happen on a calendar roll regularly? What kind of things are possible? Do you understand what I'm saying? Just like I see all this and I love the relationships, but I get kind of lost in the open possibilities and not realizing that some of this stuff might just roll naturally and happen. And there already are, I could be wrong. Maybe not. Maybe everything gets renegotiated every year. So I would be curious to see, and even some of the things Nathan was talking about, just like, how does one even enter in? What places are there openings for more things? And just to make that more accessible, I don't know where to start in some ways. So maybe it's just me, but there you go.
No, I understand that. It is, I know that it's hard. I recognize that it's hard to respond to all of this information.
No,
So it's dense and it's complicated and it's not something like, it's all in my head and I do it every day, but it's not in anyone else's head and no one else does it every day. So I totally get that. I think the interesting thing is I think we can present a little bit more of a linear annual snapshot of some of the ongoing programs, but nothing is, the only thing that's really consistent, like there's only a few things that are actually annually consistent. The rest are case by case, whatever the project calls for. So
Right.
it is challenging to look at it that way, but I think we can take a stab at reorganizing it in a little bit different format that would capture some of that, as well as kind of those access points where the public can get the information or be involved with the project, that we can add those things in. But like, Live at Juilliard, we're speaking like non-pandemic times, right? Live at Juilliard is an annual program. The National Arts Program and all the ongoing exhibits are annual programs. They're just different. There's different exhibits each year. We don't repeat all of them every year. The only one that's consistent, there's only a few that are consistent each year.
Okay.
Our annual ongoing maintenance, that's consistent. That task has to be done, but it's not consistent which artworks are being fixed and worked on, right? So it's a messy, complicated picture to look at that way, but there are things that I think we can pull aside and say, here are the regular annual programs, here are all of the projects that have different timelines and need different things at different points in time.
Is out there Santa Rosa on a schedule? Do they have certain things they do at certain, I know they've done holiday things and.
No, I wouldn't quite say that. We just launched that new website, as you know, and a new fresh look and branding. We're also kind of restructuring how Out There functions and where we're involved in the community, how we're involved in the community. So I think that all of that is you may see some new kind of recurring things that happen. The website, I think, would be a constant highlighting events, and businesses and artists are kind of a constant, but they're going to be different who we're highlighting. Out There Santa Rosa does not produce events anymore. And so we may be at an event to have a presence, to be a sponsor of that event, or just be there, but we wouldn't be putting on the event. So I think I don't know if you were here back in the days when Winter Lights was on the square or Winter Blast, and we had a kind of a branded truck that we would bring around to events and sell merchandise out of the back or have a photo booth in the back. That doesn't happen anymore. So even that isn't really, there's no like scheduled appearances anymore.
Is there any desire to look at the calendar? And I'm only using the calendar as one sort of structure example, but to look at places where we are kind of sagging and not having any public interface or even any ideas of people to propose, like spaces or kind of, in a sense, advertised opportunity that we might see as beefing up our programming in the city. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I think what I'm hearing you say is, and maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but what I'm hearing you say is what can we do to add programming in times that there's not enough going on? And I don't feel like that's the problem we need to solve.
Okay, great. That's great to know.
I think it's more about how do we get the word out to people that we exist, that there's a program, and here's how we can provide resources and tools for you to do the things you want to do. Here's what we want from you if there is an ask. I mean, some of the programs that we're going to be undertaking, for instance, we've started talking about how we're going to approach the public art audit, which is called for in our strategic plan, which is essentially identifying where public art and where recurring art events are throughout Santa Rosa, whether or not the city commissioned them or is involved with them or not, so that we can have that data and then map it and identify who has been doing the art in Santa Rosa, who has gotten the commissions, and essentially who hasn't, where and who has made all of the kind of community generated projects that we weren't involved with. And then where are areas that we need to invest in because they've been underinvested in by the city and by the public art program. But one approach to doing that we just talked about last week is to start off by collecting the data through crowdsourcing. So having people throughout the city, submit a photo, a picture, an image, and a short description of that thing, whatever it is that they want to be considered public art in Santa Rosa. And so I think through that engagement process, there will be more awareness throughout the community of what we're doing, that we exist, but also that what we consider public art and what art is in the community. And I hope that that will start a better conversation more broadly. I think that project and that kind of idea is more along the lines of what tools we can start employing to help the problem, so to speak, of not knowing the public art program or what public art is in Santa Rosa. Kristen?
Hey, Tara, thanks. I had a couple questions regarding the annual work plan discussion slide that we have in front of us. In terms of continuing projects, I was curious why the 5th Street parking garage is not listed on this list. I guess just thinking that Unum is on here, but it hasn't been completed. And
it's a good question. I have an answer for that. So this is continuing projects anticipated to still be going on in the next fiscal year, starting July 1.
Okay.
So Unum is still supposed to be going on because it's not anticipated to be installed until August, right? So that's why it's on there. But the parking garage is going to be installed over the next few weeks in May, and then it will be done.
Oh, good.
Thank you. That clarifies that. I also see an opportunity. Yes, understand that, or am acknowledging that it is a lot of information, and that there is merit in seeing kind of the graph that you had put together and how there are opportunities with other programs within the city, and how that there wasn't necessarily so much of an opportunity previously when the Art and Public Places Committee was under Parks and Recreation. I am now seeing a lot more opportunity for partnership and ability to work with Out There Santa Rosa. It doesn't seem as nebulous of a concept. I think something that would help me tie down a little bit more of these concepts is to take some items that we have on our strategic plan implementation schedule and try to associate them with the bubble diagram. That would help me understand where these kind of items fit and how they can be accomplished, and making it so the strategic plan, I guess that toolkit doesn't seem so large of a task. If we can associate it with other things that are happening within the city currently, and how what we do isn't necessarily in a vacuum. It works with other programs in existence.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest helping us kind of work how to associate our strategic plan with other programs that we're involved with.
Okay. I'm not sure. That's an interesting connection to make, and I may need your help in making those connections, because I'm not exactly sure. I mean, other than connecting the programs that are kind of on that work plan, work areas diagram, I'm not exactly sure are you talking about other areas that you're involved with that have overlap, or?
I just meant that in terms of, if we look specifically at building stronger relationships with community organizations, we can look at what organizations are in place with the associated programs. And that would be a starting point instead of recreating a wheel or trying to.
I think I understand better. Yeah, that makes sense.
So just
it's essentially it sounds like it's using partnerships and collaborations with other entities to achieve our to-do list, essentially.
Yeah, breaking it down, the tasks that can be associated to an existing group. Yes. I don't think all of them are relevant, but some for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Excuse me,
see,
everybody. I put this in the chat, but I just want to thank you all for this informative discussion. I have to leave. I have another obligation.
okay,
So,
thank you, Jeff, for
yeah,
being
thank you
here.
very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Well, I think that, I mean, I've heard some helpful suggestions. I think that I can kind of prepare, reformat some of this and bring back for the next phase of this conversation. And then I would just encourage you to continue to think about it and respond to a request that I'll be sending out for a special meeting so we don't lose all of this information by June, whenever our next meeting would be. So let's try to get together sooner than that to revisit this, and I'll provide suggestions for areas or tasks that Art and Public Places committee members can take on or be more involved with. I can add kind of interface or access points by the public onto the diagram. I can try to present different information, the same information, but differently in a more calendar format so you can see annual programs versus projects that have kind of standalone timelines. I'll bring budget details so that we can start looking at more what if we were to implement next year's strategic plan exactly as it's called for, what would that budget commitment be and what's in reserve so that we can look at other opportunities. And then, yeah, looking at partnerships that we already are planning on or doing or could do that would help with accomplishing some other tasks. And please bring whatever notes and information that you've come up with or that you would think would be helpful to share in the next conversation about this. Jessica?
I just want to mention too, if you're looking at all of this and there's something that kind of piques your interest or there's something that you think the APPC could tackle, you can email me in the meantime. And if you want more information on any of the parts of the map.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I think comes to mind immediately for like an area for the committee to have more ownership over, and I mentioned this to Kristen and Melanie earlier, is like the idea of doing open houses and engaging with the community and sharing what public art program is doing, what our current projects are, what we have to offer. And for an example could be having, the committee really take on identifying events to be at. If we have something we can hand out or have an activity that would be of benefit to the community at an already existing event. I mean, the Wednesday night market is coming back starting mid-May. And so there'll be thousands of people in Courthouse Square every Wednesday. And so you kind of have a built-in audience, right, in situations like that. But we have to figure out exactly what we want to talk to people about. So, it's like there's still stuff to figure out, but I think that general area is an interesting one for committee members to be more involved with.
Also, too, I don't know if we could do this. The Pride Parade will be in June, and that's something to consider.
Yep. So, so yeah, I think, unless anyone else wants to chime in with anything, I think we can move on for today, but we'll be revisiting this again soon. And thanks for all of your input today.
I was going to mention quickly, the Wednesday night market or open house opportunity might be a great way to talk a little bit more of, like you were saying, that crowdsourcing option or venue for getting feedback from our community, our constituents on what's meaningful and what is what people want to see. So I think that would be a very fruitful opportunity.
Yeah, and if we're ready, if we could get our act together fast enough to have this crowdsourcing, our audit program ready to launch. Jessica found another city that is doing something similar. So we know that there's something that we could at least start with, right? But it would be interesting to have that be the main thing that you're talking to people about. Like, hey, we just launched this new website. It lets you go on there and enter any piece of art that you know about in Santa Rosa and share it. And that's kind of cool. I think people will get excited about participating in that.
Great. Thank you, Tara.
Thanks, Raisa.
Thanks, Raisa.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
All right, next I would like us to move on to item 5.2, review proposed gift.
Sorry, one
sorry.
second. Just because I think we had a member of the public on earlier, I just want to make sure you call for public comments on that last item before we move on.
Thank you for reminding me. Recording secretary, do we have any public comment for the strategic plan implementation and work plan discussion?
Thank you. While we do still have a member of the public online, we do not have any raised hands at this time, nor are there any email or voicemails for this item.
Okay. Right now, I would like to move on to item 5.2, review proposed gift. Staff will present information on a proposed gift of public art to the city of Santa Rosa. Artist Adrian Lippman has offered a sculpture, Tame the Fire, to the fire department for placement in front of fire station number 2 on Stony Point Road. The fire department has approved this location. Today we will hear a presentation, and then our recommended action is to provide aesthetic review and discussion about recommendation to the city.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Kristen. So as Kristen said, this is a proposed gift by the artist, Adrian Lippman, of a sculpture he has made entitled Tame the Fire. Next slide. Just to go over the process, in our public art policy, we do have a process outlined for reviewing gifts of public art to the city. The technical review is done by city staff to determine if the artwork can be legally donated or loaned to the city, the durability, safety, and anticipated maintenance needs of the artwork, the ongoing financial costs associated with accepting the gift, and the availability of an appropriate site for the artwork. And then the policy calls for the Art and Public Places Committee to provide aesthetic review, including evaluating that the artwork demonstrates excellence in aesthetic quality, workmanship, innovation, and creativity. The artwork demonstrates appropriateness in scale and form and is of materials suitable for the site, and that the artwork builds the diversity of the public art collection. And then collectively, staff and the Art and Public Places Committee is to provide a recommendation to the city manager and his or her designee, who ultimately has authority over accepting gifts. So in this case, the city manager designee is our department director or our economic development manager. So Raisa can be the ultimate deciding factor on this once she receives our input. So next slide. This is the current gift being offered. It is titled Tame the Fire by Adrian Lippman. The sculpture shows 2 large hands made of stainless steel holding and containing flames. It is painted steel and stainless steel, 14 feet high, 6 feet wide, 2 feet deep, and needs to be bolted to a hard surface. I do have a video. I don't know, Eileen, do you want to try that link, see if it works? The artist sent this just to show the scale of it, and that's it. It was very short. That's the video. Okay, next slide. And this is the proposed location. This is Fire Station 2 on Stony Point Road. The address is 65 Stony Point Road. This location has been approved by the fire department, and the location, the exact location where the piece will be is already concrete, and the sculpture can safely be bolted to it with no additional footings or base needed. And so next slide, please. And that's it. The review that I have undertaken meets all of the criteria. So yes, the artwork can be legally donated or donated to the city. Yes, the materials are durable and would meet our maintenance needs. Yes, the ongoing maintenance needs anticipated for this piece would fit under our contract for our annual maintenance. And we have a confirmed site for the artwork. And so the aesthetic review to the committee, the questions really are, does the artwork demonstrate excellence? quality, workmanship, innovation, creativity. Does the artwork demonstrate the appropriate scale and form? And are the materials appropriate for the site? And does the artwork build the diversity of the public art collection? So that's the question. Those are the questions to ask yourselves and for the committee to discuss and then provide a recommendation. Next slide. So it is recommended that the committee recommend acceptance of this sculpture, but please, it's open for conversation, and then ultimately we'd like to have someone make a motion today. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, do we have any questions at this time regarding the proposed piece? Lisa, you raised your hand.
Yes, this is the same Adrian Lippman. He also did the one in front of the fire station on Sonoma Avenue too, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, because it did look familiar. And I think he does have some other pieces. He did also the beer on, okay, good. Now.
Yes, so technically we don't own, we haven't owned or commissioned any permanent pieces from him ever. He's applied for many of our public art opportunities in the past. The one temporary project he was awarded was the one that is in front of this Sonoma Avenue fire station. That was temporary through our fire response project, and then has stayed ongoing, stayed there ongoing. So this would be, oh, and then the beer was done through the open and out program. And it again was supposed to be temporary, but it's been ongoing as well.
Yeah, I think it's great. Okay, and then this is going to be right across from Finley Park too, correct?
Correct.
So, you know, when you drive going down Sonoma Avenue, if you're going to Finley Park, you will be able to see it. Okay, those were my only questions for now. And then I'll let anybody else, if they want to ask some questions.
I guess I have a few questions.
Mhm.
Regarding the location of the piece. I hope that it was considered, you know, turning radius of the fire trucks and making sure that all those clearances were taken into consideration.
Definitely.
Okay, good. I think that the oh, sorry, we're only doing questions now, not comments. So I will just leave it at that.
Any other questions?
All right, next, if we want to move forward with further discussion of this, I understand that we need to put a motion on the table. Would anyone like to make a motion to recommend accepting the gift, or?
I'm sorry, I have a quick question again. The maintenance, I know you said something about that. I just want to, how much again do you think the cost of the maintenance will be on this? On a feature?
Yeah, I don't have a dollar estimate to share, except that the materials themselves are durable and don't require a lot of maintenance in general. The only thing that may be needed is just annual cleaning, very light cleaning. In several years' time, painting may be needed for the painted surfaces, but that's also minimal cost. So we anticipate that the cost would fall under our normal contract with our conservator, which is $50,000 a year for all of our collection needs.
Okay, thank
Melanie,
you.
you had a question?
Yeah, so this is different than the one that's at the other fire station. That does not belong to the city, correct?
Well, during COVID, it was installed, and no, was it before COVID? I can't even remember. It became a long-term loan essentially. So
It was before COVID.
What's that?
It was
BC?
before
Yeah.
COVID. Yeah. And it was
anyway,
yeah.
it's definitely it was installed as part of our fire response projects. It was anticipated to be temporary. It's been on an extended loan. if there's a need to bring a request to accept, another donation, I would bring that forward. But at this point, I think it's a long-term loan.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kristen.
For our information, are there any anticipated risks with approving or recommending that the city accept this donation? It sounds like it's a pretty seamless partnership if the fire department does want a piece here and the artist is willing to donate. So I was wondering if there's any risks that I'm not picking up on.
No, it's a pretty straightforward process in this case. I think the only risks that we ever see in something like this is if the artwork itself ends up needing a lot more maintenance than we anticipated, and I don't foresee that happening in this case. Or if the site becomes unavailable and it can't be there anymore, then we'd have to find a suitable replacement location. However, there's always the opportunity, as there is with this applies to any item in our collection, there's always the opportunity to deaccession a piece of art if we absolutely need to, if there's not an appropriate site anymore, or we can't care for it anymore, given the cost. We can go through a process to say, we don't want this anymore. We want to offer it back to the artist or the artist's family, or there's a variety of steps that can be taken if that is ever needed.
Okay. That answers my questions. Thank you. Moving forward with the discussion, we need to have a motion on the table. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the proposed gift for fire station number 2?
I'll make a motion. I would like to motion to approve the sculpture from Adrian Lippman as a gift to the fire station number 2.
So just to clarify, the committee's role is to recommend that the city adopt.
The city attorney or their designee.
I would like to make a motion for this
city manager,
recommend the city manager to adopt the Adrian Lippman donation sculpture for fire station number 2.
Second.
Great, thank you guys. In terms of discussion, would anyone like to offer their opinions or kind of any summary about this piece? I think it would be a great kind of wayfinding opportunity for the fire station. Sometimes people driving by don't actually realize it is a fire station right there. There is a few other city properties right there belonging to public works and water, and I think this would set this apart from and be good wayfinding for this location. So I'm happy to voice support for the recommendation.
And
Lisa.
before a vote is taken, please do call for public comment as well.
Great. Oh, Lisa, you're on mute.
Here. Okay, sorry about that. There we go. Yes, after I think all of our disasters that we have had in relationship with fires and the damage that has been caused and the loss of life, I think it's very important that we do recognize and bring attention and have some kind of remembrance and memorial of those tragedies and stuff. So, and I think this does help. I think this does, it recognizes and brings attention to it. And that's something that we need. We can't just, throw this under the rug and pretend it never happened. And I think this is a great opportunity to do that. When you do have the flames and then the hand, and there was a lot of hands in that environment at that time. And the way it's done, I think it's done appropriately for the situation. So that's my spill.
And did you have a comment?
Yeah, I would like to acknowledge the generosity of the artists in donating it and making it available on a permanent basis, and all the work that went into it and thought. And yeah, I just want to thank him for that.
Great. I'd like to ask our recording secretary if there are any public comments regarding the proposed gift Tame the Fire at Fire Station number 2.
We have no raised hands at this time, nor are there any emails or voicemails for this item.
Great. I would like to take a roll call vote on this item.
Okay. Chair Kiefer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jones-Carter,
Aye.
Member Puentes,
Aye.
Member Baumgartner,
I
Member Asdirian. I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Nay.
Okay. And Member Sayers? Oh, you are also on mute.
Okay, here we go. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Let the record reflect that this has passed with 4 yeas and 1 nay.
Isn't it 5?
Oh, 5. I apologize. 5 yeas and 1 nay.
Thank you.
Can we ask for the reasons behind nays? I'd love to know and hear, but if not, if
It's up to Nathan. if he wants
Nathan
to
doesn't
say
want to say
anything.
anything. Yeah,
sure.
Otherwise,
okay, please.
I think there's a lot to be said for careful consideration about the value of open space, or kind of, I don't know. For me, this particular object feels like it could maybe use more careful consideration about what kind the complexity of the symbolic language that might address a disaster like this. And for me, I think I don't know. It doesn't feel like it rises to that standard for me.
Nathan, I totally understand. There was the symbolism behind it. I understand how it can go different ways. I do understand that, but I just would like a little more in depth for what you're coming at, because I'm only just because if it does come up later on from others and from the public, I want to make sure it's something that I have thought about that I'm just not seeing.
No, one of the criteria that was that came up in one of the criteria that we're sort of tasked with considering is the level of, like, what it adds to the kind of range and diversity of the formal language of public art in the city of Santa Rosa. And for me, this particular work does not add to that diversity in a way that would cause me to vote yes on this. But I respect everyone's considered opinion and making the choice that they did. And
I agree with you.
And I think the artists should be commended for their their desire to contribute to the aesthetic and social fabric of the community. yeah, but for me, it's a nay.
Anne, did you have a comment?
Yeah. I'm a little confused about the process because I share a lot of the feeling about the critical or cultural aspect of the piece. Like when I'm hearing that that's something that is recommended, we approve, and it seems to be I'm like, oh, is this how this goes? You know, like if someone wants to do it and it's not offensive, is this a good thing to do? And are we not always called to critique and decipher every single thing that happens in the city? So I'm curious about that. I'm watching this. I have gotten the impression with other things, and people have come forward to do a painting in the street or whatever. And it doesn't seem to be, I mean, maybe a wonderful cultural, thoughtful thing people want to do, but it's not going to rise to a level of being super high level of in terms of its execution. But we go, yeah, we want to approve this. We want to. So just like, is there times when there's more call for like finely tuning how we feel, and we have discussions of that, or is there a way to sort of set the discussion up so we really are talking about the same things at the same time, instead of it having a variety of, rather than just individuals' thoughts about tonight, this is the time to really start talking deeply about something, or we're all kind of going, yeah, actually, this is the time to this. I understand I'm bringing up a wide variety here, but it is confusing. And my impression was this was sort of something like, this is what we do. So I'll keep watching.
I think the thing to clarify here is that the policy calls for the committee to do aesthetic review following that criteria that I listed, and that was in the presentation. There's no mandate to hold back or to not think that an honest discussion about those criteria isn't warranted. The committee should do that, should undertake that. But on the other hand, and at the same time, no buts included, at the same time, most donation requests or donation offers come to us because the city department, so in this case, the fire department, wants the piece there. And so it's really a request from the department to say, this artist wants to donate this piece. What's the process to accept it? And so, whether or not we want the piece in our collection forever, or if we don't agree with the aesthetic criteria, I mean, to me, that's all weighted equally, to be honest. But I mean, everyone's got their own sense of that. I think there's no other guidance that the policy or that I can provide you that hasn't really been vetted. So if this is something that the committee would like to revisit, to revise our donation policies and procedures, or to figure out if there's a way to say, well, sure, you can put it in front of the fire department, but we don't want it in our collection, so it's up to you to maintain it, right? I mean, that's another way to go. That's not currently how we operate, but we could change our policies to support a different approach. So, I mean, the questions you're asking are all good. It's more of a larger discussion, I think, in changing our policy. Under our current policy, this is kind of how it functions. But the questions that you're supposed to be asking under the aesthetic review part is definitely up to you to be as honest and detailed as you want. So because action was already taken on this item, we do have a vote to recommend acceptance. Unless a committee member right now wants to ask for a reconsideration, then the vote can be, there's some procedure that I'll have to look up if that's needed. But since their motion has been taken, we can move on unless there's concern.
I won't make that motion, but I do, I do appreciate your comments, Anne, because I'll just say this. Personally, I don't like this. But I went along with what I thought the majority of the people wanted to do. And you guys are more artistic than I am. So I tend to leave that to your purview. But no, I appreciate your comments and think that moving forward, we do need to have a little more discussion and not just rubber stamp.
I think this conversation has been good food for thought. I'm not personally wanting to make an alteration to our vote at this time, but I will take the opportunity to think about how we look at donations going forward. If that's kind of the consensus of the group, I would like to move on to the next item. Is everyone good with that? Great. Okay, item 5.3, we have project updates. Staff will present updates on current projects. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you. I have just a few brief updates on our ongoing projects. Let me get my notes out. Okay. So for Unum, there's been no updates since our last meeting. Installation is still anticipated in August. For the 5th Street parking garage, Help Each Other Grow mural, the artists have moved their installation date to 1 week, so May 9th instead of May 2nd, which I think is what I said last time. But they are underway with that. Jessica, do you want to add anything else there, or is that all we have to update on at this point?
That's pretty much it. They're ready to go next Monday.
Great. When we know what their hours are going to be on site, I would like to be able to send a note to all the committee members. So if they want to stop by and say hi or take a look at it, so maybe we can work on something to get out to them, Jessica.
They did say that their hours are going to be, actually, now I forget. I think it was like 8 to 5 every day if weather permits.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the Asawa Art Panels, so I know I briefly gave a little update when Lisa asked earlier, but essentially Artworks Foundry is continuing to work on preparing the bronze cast of the panels to be installed on a new fountain in Courthouse Square. I actually have a meeting with the Foundry tomorrow to get an update. They owe us, their next deliverable are the final engineering for the panels and how they will be attached to the new fountain, which then will be sent over to the fountain construction manager and engineer so that they can make sure that the fountain plans are appropriate to put bronze panels on. So that's kind of where we're at with the process. But that what that engineering entails is essentially like what the final dimensions will be of all the bronze casts, because when you make bronze casts of an original, they are a tiny bit smaller than the original. And so, and they're doing a 3D scanning process. And so they can make adjustments during that process, which allows for a lot more flexibility. But essentially, we will have determined the exact panel sizes, the estimated weights of each one. And then, like I said, the attachment method for how they will be sitting and attached to the fountain walls. And I don't have a timeline yet for when the fountain will be constructed or when the panels will be installed. So that will all be forthcoming. Do you have a question about that, Melanie?
Yeah, did we ever get any resolution on what was going to happen to the panels?
Yeah, so at this point, the recommendation will have to go through an appropriate process to get the final, to make this happen through the official channels. But essentially what is being discussed now is for the panels to actually be returned to the family of Ruth Asawa, who have the resources and connections with other institutions who might want to care for them and restore them, or display some portion of them in an indoor environment, such as a museum. Because of their current condition, they just will need so much work to make them presentable for outdoors, and even indoors will need a lot of preservation care. So that's what we're currently talking about, but that would essentially require a deaccession process. So it will come to the committee for discussion and recommendation, and then ultimately it has to go to city council. In any time we actually want to get rid of something and release our ownership over it, city council does have to approve. And to be honest, we've looked at many opportunities, many options for what to do with those panels. And this really has been the only viable option that we've come up with. We've tried local institutions, even the Sonoma County Museum, to take them on, but they're so large and they're in such bad condition that the amount of money and even space needed to store them is just so substantial that most of our county institutions aren't able to take that on. Okay, so for our conservation and maintenance ongoing, Preservation Arts is currently working on repairs to the tile dragon mural that's on the Prince Memorial Greenway under Highway 101. That was actually damaged several months ago, maybe even a year ago now. It was or about 10 months, 9 months. There was a pretty substantial homeless encampment in that area back then, and some fires. It was used as like a backdrop for campfires, and several tiles cracked, several sections broke off and fell off due to the kind of use that was going on down there. So they're finally working on that. They'll be on site tomorrow as well. And then we'll have that up and running. That is an Art Start piece, and we did offer to Art Start for them to do the repair work, which they turned down. They didn't have the ability to take that on. So we're having our conservation firm do it instead. We also got a proposal from Preservation Arts to work on all 3 of our Peanuts bronzes, which are in our collection. There's the Snoopy and Charlie Brown sculpture in Depot Park. There's Marcy sitting on a bench reading a library book, or I don't know if it's a library book, a book, but it's near the library on 4th Street downtown. And then there's Lucy and Schroeder on playing up the piano at the Finley Community Center in a fountain. Those are the 3 that are in our collection. Traditionally and historically, the Schultz family has taken care of those pieces for us. They would clean and wax them regularly, but they haven't been able to do that in the recent past. And so now we're turning to our conservators to take over that care and management of them. The Schultz family does still want to contribute towards their care, so we're working on figuring out what that looks like. The only other updates, nope, that's it. All the other projects really are status quo since last time, so no other updates. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the project updates, Tara.
Sure.
Seeing no questions from committee members, I'm going to move on to item 6. We've got committee member reports. Would any of our subcommittees like to report out on their task force? And this is also time to report out on any events upcoming or involvement within the community. Nathan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I will say that OPATH is opening on the 14th in Juilliard Park. And that's exciting. And that'll be 20 alternative art spaces from the greater Bay Area. And I think even one from coming out from Chicago. And also Starkey Fosgreen is opening a show on May 30th at Escalar. Who's a interesting local artist.
Could you tell us a little bit more about OPATH in Juilliard Park? Will that be a multi-day event or?
That's just that Saturday, the 14th.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But there's a wide variety of performances and kind of community-based performative art projects that are happening throughout downtown Santa Rosa as part of that. And it is moving towards opening events in Mexico City and Amsterdam, and will be a continuous annual event in Santa Rosa going forward, if all goes according to plan. So I think it's, yeah, an interesting opportunity for interface between local artists and a kind of broader international community of artists.
Nathan, did you give the time? Did you give the time for the
So it'll
May
start at
14th?
6 a.m. and go until sunset.
So
Did you
you're on
say-
mute.
Oh, sorry. Did you say
Oh.
6 a.m. to sunset?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Will you send out the information in an email for the upcoming things? I know you sent out the last Escalar show, and I know you previously sent out an OPAF flyer, but if there's anything else you want me to distribute to the committee members, please
Okay.
send it over.
Thanks, Tara.
Well, I'm not a committee member, but I want to share and applaud the committee for participating in the San Jose JC Earth Day mural project. I think that turned out really excellent with everyone's participation who could be there. I tried to be there, but that was the day I found out that I had been exposed to COVID. Luckily, I didn't get it, but I had to go home immediately. So I'm sorry that I couldn't be there longer, but thank you. I thought it, like all of the documentation that I saw about the whole event in itself and all the different mural projects. And now that I've been able to walk down, on the sidewalk by the street, it just really, it's exciting that the committee was able to be involved with that. So thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
Ditto.
I agree. It was a lot of fun. It was good to be with everyone in the community like that.
Mm-hmm.
It still looks good. I've been trying to tell people about it. It's amazing how it's holding up to being driven on all the time.
Yeah, I in fact was like, I'm not sure these are those clay-based paints they said they were.
I know.
Great. Next on our agenda, we have item 7, department reports. And
I don't have anything. Yeah, thank you. I don't have anything to report today. Maybe next time, but just chugging along with everything. So nothing new.
okay. Item 8, we have future agenda items. Time reserved for discussion about whether to place matters on a future agenda for possible action. Are there any suggestions of items to elevate or adding to our list of future agenda items? I think what we talked about today in terms of the donation to fire station number 2 does somewhat fit under our fire commemoration memorial project. So it's good to keep these items in the back of our head as we're having these meetings each month.
Actually, Kristen, I would suggest we add a different item. That is a specific memorial project that's being planned by the county that may have involvement with this committee, the line item that you just referenced. So for the discussion regarding gift procedures, I think that is something that I would add to that list so that we can keep track that we should have that discussion again or at another time.
Agreed.
Agreed. To revisit our gift or our donation policy.
Yeah.
Just also, we were going to talk about or I can't remember where it is, the youth member.
Yeah.
I just don't want it to fall off our list.
Yeah, we can revisit that. Essentially, there's no roadmap for us to follow. So we just, I think, need to figure it out ourselves. So again, that could be another committee involved process, maybe one of our current task forces, or if there's a separate group of you that want to get together to develop the process that we would use for soliciting, selecting, appointing youth representatives. I think that we just are going to have to figure it out ourselves at this point.
I thought there was somebody else who was working on this.
There is. So the community engagement office, there's staff there that have a planned, well, they have a partnership with Latino Service Providers, which is a local nonprofit organization. And they have a program called Youth Promotores. And those youth are interested in being appointed to a variety of city boards and commissions and committees to provide that youth perspective. And that program probably won't launch until next year sometime.
Okay.
It is possible that we could make sure that Art and Public Places Committee is on the list to receive one of those youth representatives. But we also, so that I guess that's an option to wait for that program to get up and running. But because I think the conversation we had previously was because it was going to take a while, why don't we just do our own thing? But again, there's no procedures for us to follow. So it's kind of like, okay, well, then let's do our own thing. We got to figure out how we want to identify someone and select someone to be a youth representative.
Okay.
So that maybe that can go on the list for, I think it can be a future agenda item, but I also think it could be a part of our discussion that we'll have hopefully in just a couple of weeks about the planning process, because I feel like that could be an area that committee members are more actively involved.
And I think the item, how APPC can support community programs and events, I think that does tie in with the conversation we were having earlier about our strategic plan implementation and annual work plan, kind of as we were looking at the bubbles of the different programs that we're involved in. So I would, if we are to have this as a future agenda item, just to think about kind of that discussion we were having earlier. I think that fits.
Yeah, I mean, I think throughout this process, we may end up taking some items off of that future agenda item list because they're being addressed through kind of a collaborative process instead of some of them may still require action by the committee and need to be on an agenda for an action to be taken. So I think that list might get divided up into areas for discussion in our annual work planning versus future items to take action on that are a little bit more explicit.
Well, thank you everyone for your time in today's meeting. I'm going to move to meeting adjournment. It says here that our next regularly scheduled meeting is June 6th, but we will keep an ear out for any special meeting to regroup, to rediscuss our budget, and so that stays fresh in our minds and doesn't get stale when we come to our next monthly meeting.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.